So, welcome everyone. Um, Thank you all for being here, for being patient with me. I know I did not release this week's weekly issue, which doesn't bode well since I think it's only just the second one, but it's been a really tough new year for me. So, I'm trying to get back on the ball. I will be sending out this week's weekly, it'll just be several days late. I'm going to try to get it out actually. Later today, as well as this will be one of those days where I end up sending 2 emails in the same day, which I also don't like to do, but, things being the way they are, that's what's gonna end up happening today. So you will receive 2 emails today. You'll receive this one, which is the TiF recap of 2025, and also the weekly issue that I neglected to release on Monday. So, what is the TiF recap of 2025? It's essentially, you see like Spotify does this where they do a Spotify Wrapped, and other companies are now starting to do it. YouTube does it. Substack has a feature where you can see what your Substack year looked like. So this is just a way for me to share with you some of the nerdy things that I keep track of behind the scenes on how Top and Fiction did with the entire calendar year of 2025. And so this is going to be very numbers heavy. And I'm gonna, talk about some of the events that we did, contests, etc. And so that'll be what we discuss here today. And if you have any questions for me, please feel free to ask them in the chat. You will be able to watch this again on demand later. Like I said, I'm going to send an email out that will have all these numbers in the email so that in case you do or don't want to watch the video back, you can have all of that information at your fingertips if you need it. So let's start from um, a macro and work our way down into the little nitty gritty details. Starting with Top and Fiction, as you know, is based on a weekly email that goes out typically every Monday. So in the calendar year of 2025, we had 52 weekly issues, and then we also do a monthly recap where at the end of every month, we will pluck some featured stories from the previous month weekly issues, as well as including some new ones that weren't in those weekly issues. So we also have monthly recaps. So all the information that I give you today will essentially come from all the submissions we received and then all of the stories that were chosen for the 52 weekly issues and the 12 monthly recaps. And the one that I always like to start with, because it's the one I think that a lot of fiction writers and a lot of readers who come to Substack and wonder, where are all the writers? My favorite is how many uniquely different names, meaning writers, did we feature in our weekly issues and monthly recaps? And that number this year is too shy of 600. So we had 598 different featured writers in 2025 on Top and Fiction. Now, I tried to go through the list and find any duplicates as much as possible, which is why I always stress making sure to check the name of your the writing of your name. Some people like to use initials, and then one week they're putting initials for their name, another week they're dropping an initial, another week they're using a different name, but they might 6 months in change their name, et cetera, et cetera. So I try my hardest to find who those are and fix them and make sure that we're keeping it all together so it doesn't look like 3 different people when they're all the same person. Something else that I urge you to check are spaces, because what will typically, the one biggest error I see a lot is people will put their name properly, but then for whatever reason, they will put a space at the end of their name. And so I have to do all these formulas and on my Excel sheet and everything to kind of catch when a space is being used, meaning, that name is on my list twice. So again, I cleaned up as much as I could. And to my satisfaction, there were 598 different writers that were featured throughout 2025, which is I think, a pretty big number. I don't know how you feel about that, but almost 600 is a big pool to dip into. Now, another number that I love to see is the number of submissions. And I am going to attempt to give myself some goals when it comes to top and fiction for 2026. So, the reason why I like to have these numbers is after now, this being the second year of doing top and fiction, that we should start having some goals and trying to meet them. And so, would I like to have more than 600? Different featured writers in 2026? Yes, and so my goal is to do 600, and that might be like, "Well, wait, you only have 598, so you only wanna get 2 more?" Yeah, I don't like to make goals that I can't reach, so I don't wanna say something crazy like 750 if I'm less likely to reach 750, right? There are only so many days in the year, there are only so many featured stories that are picked every week. I need to be reasonable with my goals. But the next number I want to share with you is the number of submissions in 2025. Now, this includes some of the featured stories, obviously, but this is literally every time you go into my form, whether it's the Google form or now we're using the Notion form. Last year it was Google. So every time you went into Google and you filled out that form, that was considered a submission, whether you did one or two that week, however many times you did it throughout the year. How many submissions did Top and Fiction receive in 2026? And my count is 2,442 submissions. Now, of the 2,442, there were several that I find on my own that other people who have helped me throughout the year in various different ways have found on their own, meaning they weren't officially put in the submission form. So, really, if we had included stories that weren't a part of the submission form and those that actually were submitted by all of you, we probably, that number would be closer to 3,000. But having, 2,442 submissions to choose from, and that's why I make that a part of the archive so people can go to that and search through it if they like, is because that really opens the library and portfolio of how many stories there actually are to read. Sure, Top and Fiction every Monday plucks, 10 or 15 or 20 from what is submitted in order to be in the email. But the real bread and butter, the real important place that people should be going to, especially readers, is to our archive where we are keeping all 2,000 plus in there so that people at any given moment on any given day can go into that archive and can filter for a genre, a category, a specific person, and find all of the submissions that they have in our archive. So, okay, so let's see what other cool, important story numbers we have. So the number of feature stories. How many stories have we featured in 2025? Meaning, how many made it into the email in either the weekly issue or the monthly issues? And that is 1,095. Now the number is not 100%, unfortunately, because there were certain weeks where I featured stories that were a part of a special event, so they may not be on this list, but let's just say for the sake of argument and for the spreadsheet that I currently have on my master tracker, 1,095 were how many stories were featured throughout the year, which when you think about it, when you compare 1,095 to the 2,442, it's almost 50%. So almost 50%, you could say, of the story submissions that we received in 2025, almost half of them ended up being a featured story that was listed every week between our weekly issues and our monthly recap. So now let's do um, hold on one second. Okay, so now let's take a look at even more granular stuff, right? Because I like to break things down as much as possible for myself in the back end. And yes, I do keep track of this. And yes, unfortunately, a lot of this is manual, though I am working on creating a lot of formulas to take away a bit of the manual labor that this creates for me. But One of the things I like to look at is how is taking that 1,000 plus um, submission, the 1,000 plus featured stories and seeing how many of them fall into certain categories, right? How many of them were comics and cartoons? How many of them were poetry? And this helps me to make sure that I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible and making sure that everyone gets a seat at the table. I don't want to lean too heavily to short stories. I don't want to lean too heavily to, you know, serials, but I also don't want to leave poetry out, right? So this is a way for me to just check it. And I also need to be mindful of the fact that if one is dominating over the other, it is because the number of writers that are here are not going to be 50% poetry. So if I don't have as many poetry features as I do short stories, that's simply because there are actually more short story writers here than poetry writers, right? And I'm just using that as an example because it's the one that I pay the most attention to is trying to find the poets who are in Substack on a regular basis because I know there are so many that I'm missing, right? Um, Okay, so really quickly, I can say that we have featured 4 Substack Lives. So in case you're not aware, and I'm hoping that what I'm going to talk about next, which is the Top in Fiction Summit 2026, you can go live on Substack and you can read your fiction. And if you do, I would love it because I would love to feature you in a weekly or monthly recap as doing a Substack Live. And the way to get on as a Substack Live is to go live on your Substack and read something you've written that's a piece of fiction, submit it on Friday, and let's see if it gets featured. I'm constantly looking for that. We don't have enough of it, and in the next 3 days, we are going to have close to 50 different readers going live and reading their work, which will be the biggest event I think that's ever happened on Substack. So I'm excited. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, but let's keep going. So for comics slash cartoons, which are grouped together, 7 have been featured. I know there are so many more. It's hard for me to find them. I really rely on people to spread the word of Top and Fiction far and wide so that the people who do comics and cartoons, the people who write poetry, will find Top in Fiction, will take 2 seconds out of their time to submit their work that's newly written and, get on our big list that we have every week. So we've featured 101 different poetry, and that's not necessarily different. There might be a lot of people who are in there who were featured multiple times. It's just we've had 101 featured poetry. Next on that list, um, I can go. Actually, let's try to see if I could go from smallest to highest. So let's jump back a bit to short serials. So we featured 67 short serials, and then we featured 101 poems. Uh, we have featured 136 serials. Now, the reason why that's so small is, as you know, I was testing this idea of removing serials and short serials from the weekly features and trying to give them a bigger showcase and a bigger stage. I don't know that that was um, a success the way that I thought in my mind. So I am trying to rethink that again. But I know that there is some formula, something, some way that cereals can be um, the more dominant piece of Top in Fiction. And I am, trust me, actively coming up with ideas and thinking of ways to make that happen. Um, okay, so then we have micro slash flash fiction. Um, where we featured 276 um, micro slash flash fiction, and then the most dominant, which I love because I write short stories myself, is the short story category where it's 594 um, short stories were featured in the last year, so that's almost half. or a little more than half of the featured stories were short stories. And then one quick note for the new voices, 359 new voices, meaning featured for the first time. So that accounts for about one third of our list, which I think is pretty good. I'm hoping to have more finite details in 2026 so that I could give more accurate percentages, not just for you, but for myself on how things are going. But doing the calculations quickly in my head, it's about 30 to 33% of the featured stories were new voices, meaning they were brought in for the first time. And okay, so now let's look at some more interesting numbers. Let's check out the genres because I know people love to know what's going on with the genres. So looking at the 2,400 plus um, submissions. So this is not looking at the actual featured stories that were selected. If you want that information, I could totally get it. So you can, and I probably need that for myself just so I can see if I'm leaning heavily towards one genre over the other. I do, again, I try to spread it out because I want to cover everyone, right? So in this case, let's again go from smallest to highest. And again, this is you submitting. So whether or not your story is selected as a featured story, this is me counting how many from writers from specific genres are actually filling out the form that opens every Friday and stays open until Sunday, right? So I really need you guys to spread the word, let people know, and you do the same thing, fill out that form so that these numbers can look more accurate because I know there are a lot of you out there, and it's hard for me to do it on my own. So I require a lot more boots on the ground to help me spread what Top and Fiction is all about and what we're doing. So let's start with climate fiction. So 13 submissions for climate fiction, and those 13 might all be from the same person. I don't know. I'd have to do more digging to get that information, but we've had 13 submissions, 58 for historical fiction, and then we have romance, third from the bottom at 75. And then we have comedy. Comedy was just recently added last year, and it has blown up tremendously. So I'm glad that I made the decision to add that genre. If a genre gets added, it would take a lot for me to add it. I do a lot of research, I do a lot of thinking on it, and I felt that comedy needed to be on there, and I'm glad that it was added because we got 94. So with even with romance, historical fiction, and climate fiction being genres that were listed since day one of Top and Fiction's existence, in just 1 year of comedy being on here, it's surpassed those three easily. Next up from comedy is mystery with 119 submissions. And then next up from that is poetry with 109. Now, poetry is a little finicky to figure out for the simple fact that you can select poetry as a genre and as a category. And I'm trying to figure out how to make that a little less confusing because I'm sure it is confusing for the poets. Although what I find is happening is people are selecting poetry the for the category, and then when it comes to genre, they'll actually pick one of the genres that isn't poetry. The reason why it's in both is because a lot of times people who write poems aren't writing a horror poem or a fantasy poem. So I put free verse, meaning it's just a poem that can mean any interpretation to the reader, not just the writer. And so I'm trying to figure out a way to better um, figure that out because what happens is when I look at the genre of poetry, it says 109, but that's not fully accurate because some of the people who selected poetry as the categories just selected a different genre. So some of the fantasy, for example, might have a few in there that are actually poems, but the person who selected poetry as the category selected fantasy as the genre. I know it's trying to figure it out. Okay, so next up from poetry is science fiction with which jumps up to double. that are poetry. So now we're getting into the upper tier echelon, which to me tells you just what kind of writers there are in the fiction community, not just in top and fiction, but in Substack as a whole. So now we're getting into science fiction with 218 submissions. Then we have close um, above it is speculative fiction with 274. Then we have fantasy at 363. Then we're really doing some big leaps here to horror at 420. And then our number one, as always, is literary fiction at 589. So that says a lot to me, right? If literary fiction wasn't an option here, horror would be the highest genre here. In top and fiction and probably in Substack in general, there are a lot of horror writers, which is why you will notice that a lot of the events and contests that we have might lean a bit horror, not just because that's my favorite genre as well, but because I do acknowledge that. But I am trying to make a lot of the contests and events, or let's say a lot of the events are going to try and be a bit more um, welcoming of all genres, and the contests may lean a bit more towards a specific genre, just for the theme sake, it might require it. Um, but that's all the info I have on the genres breakdown. Let's see, what else do I have that I can share? I have so many. So I did that. I did that. Okay, so for really quickly, I wanted to bring up also the annual recap. So as you guys know, last year I did a big deal about the annual recap. I even put together a magazine, which I didn't sell, but I made the PDF available. This year I do want to make a PDF available again. It's going to be very scaled back from the colors and the fanciness that was last year's, just because the year got away from me at the end of the year, and it was just a bit too difficult for me to get it all wrapped up in a nice little bow. But on the plus side, because of that, the form for you to fill out the annual recap is still open. I neglected to close it, and I figured I'll just leave it open all the way through till Sunday night. So, because I am going to kind of do a bit of a scramble on Monday and put it together to make it available for you guys for free to download. It'll be a PDF, and the intention of the annual recap is for now you to go into your library of work, if you're a fiction writer that has been featured in either a weekly or a monthly. If you have been featured at all, you go into your library of what you wrote in 2025, pick one of those stories, fill out the form, let me know what it is, and it will be added in the annual recap that I send out on Monday. That will include a link for people to then download this massive PDF of the best work, essentially, that was put out there in the calendar year of 2025. So if you want to be on there, if you've been featured in Top and Fiction in 2025 and you want to be a part of this annual recap PDF list where all of the best is going to be included, please be sure to go to topandfiction.com, look for um, it should be in the last weekly email, the last monthly recap. You should be able to find the link somewhere in there. Um, Okay, so with that said, let's talk a bit about why this was originally meant to happen today, regardless of what's about to happen in the next 3 days. I had always intended on January 15th to do the annual recap this way. It just so happens that it worked out perfectly because immediately following this, starting tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday, is the TiF Summit 2026, first of its kind. It came together literally out of happenstance earlier this year, or earlier, sorry, mid last year, where I kind of jokingly said, wow, it would be great if there was a Substack fiction convention. And initially, the idea was to have several panels and ask people in the fiction community if they wanted to be a part of those panels, actually, have discussions about characters and world building and all those things that we all know typically happen at a convention. But I felt like that was stale and boring. I was like, we need something a bit more lively, a bit more specific to what happens here on Substack, especially Substack Live, and be having this ability and this platform. And to me, what made the most sense is why not have this big summit where we all get together and we read our work, whatever we want to read, we read it, and then we let people ask us questions, and we go one after the other, after the other, after the other. And it turns out that that was something that I think was a good pivot for me to make. I think the having a convention would have been a bit more difficult. You run into the idea of people feeling like they weren't exactly knowledgeable to be sitting in that panel. When I would ask people if they wanted to be a part of this panel or that panel, the question of just feeling a bit, having a bit of doubt on whether or not they should be a part of that panel, and if anyone would take them being on that panel seriously. So I think it's better to do what is about to happen for the simple reason that I think Substack Fiction needs to think about how to utilize the tools that have been given to us. And one of those tools is going live like this, being able to take 10, 15, 20 minutes out of your time, even if it's once a month, once every 2 months, once a week, to come on here, read something you've written, good, bad, or indifferent, get feedback on it, get anything on it, post it after you're done if you want to get continued feedback and ideas and thoughts on it. It helps you to kind of see how your audience feels about it, see how you read it, the cadence of how you read something. And then, you could do it again another time if it's something that you feel like you're able to do. And I'm hoping that this gives a lot of motivation and inspiration to other fiction writers who won't be a part of the summit to go ahead and just do it on their own and go live. Let your audience know you're going live. Read your work. It's a great way to get feedback. It's a great way to do editing for yourself. Again, if it's not 100% ready, it's a great editing tool. Um, okay, so sorry, I had to check to see if someone was coming to my door. Um, so let's talk about what is actually going to happen for the TIFF Summit 2026. The way this is going to work, and this is the way it's going to work on Friday and on Sunday. Unfortunately, Saturday, I will be unavailable for most of the morning into most of the afternoon. So I won't be there in the way that I'd like to be on Saturday. But tomorrow and Sunday, half an hour before all of the readers start, I am going to come on here live and I am going to essentially let you know who the readers are for that day. So tomorrow I will come on here and I will let you know who the first reader is, the second, and the times, Eastern time. I will tell you Eastern time when they will be on. Ideally, they're going to be back to back to back. Now, some things to note on here on how this is going to work. One, you do not have to subscribe to any of the readers in order to get notified or to find out when they go live. What I would suggest is you follow them. So go to their Substack profile, which you can get a link to go to the Substack profile. Let me just make sure I have it. If you go to tifpress.com /TIFF summit 2026, and I will include this in the email that I send out today, but there is a dedicated page over on tiffpress.com where I have them all listed, and I also have their profile link. So you can just click the link, follow them. Again, you don't have to subscribe, and following does not mean that you're going to now get an email from any of these people who you follow. You don't get an email. It's just like Twitter or Instagram where you're just following their account. And if you want, you can quickly unfollow them after you do, but this will just give you a notification when they go live on your Substack app. You will get a notification saying, Essie Reed is live, and you could click on it and you can join her live and see her reading. So each reader, Essie Reed is going to be first tomorrow at 11 a.m. So I will be on live at 10:30 a.m. giving you the rundown of all the readers for Friday. What's going to happen is they will come on their own channel, which is why you need to follow them there. Following TIFF Press, while it's great, is not going to be how you'll get notified as each reader comes on. Now, what I'm going to try to do is do a restack when they go live on the TIFF Press account. So every time a person goes live, I will be notified because I'm following all the accounts, and I will do a restack of their live posts so you can get it there as well. But the better way is to follow each reader. They will come on, they will introduce themselves, the title of their story that they're about to read. They will then read their story. When they are finished reading their story, they will thank you for being there during the stream. They will then tell you the name of the next person, the title of that story, and they will then direct you to go to that person's profile, follow them, whatever, in preparation for their read. Not every reader is going to take the full 30 minutes. Some are gonna take half that, some might take even less than that. That's a good thing because it means that you will then have time to relax, chill out, get prepared for the next reader to come on. Each reader, though, is going to start at either the top of the hour or the top of the half hour. That's intentional, so that way there's a bit of a rhythm there, but again, not every reader is gonna take the full 30 minutes, is gonna be live the full 30 minutes, so keep that in mind. If someone is scheduled to start at, let's say, 5 p.m., you'll wanna be there at 5 p.m. because they might be done by 5:10, and then you might miss it if you think you can join a bit later to their reading, okay? If someone's starting at 5:30, you'll wanna make sure you're there at 5:30 and not, 20 minutes after that, because 'cause they're likely no longer gonna be live, and you'll be needing to prepare for whoever the next reader is. This is a bit of a marathon here, so it's okay if you miss one because I will be collecting all of the video, all of the audio from every single person, and then I will be putting it somewhere, probably YouTube. I don't know yet, but all of them will be somewhere where you can access them and watch them at a different date and time if you are unable to be there live. Sorry about that. Um, My wife just came in and I needed to tell her I'm on a live. Okay. So let's see. Okay, so that's TIFF Summit. Okay, that's gonna be for 3 days, right? So we're gonna do Friday from 11 to 9, which is crazy, 10 hours. And then Saturday again from 11 to 9 p.m. And then where is it? And then Sunday, I will be the last reader. So Essie reads the first reader, I will be the last reader. So you will be hearing a story from me on Sunday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. On Sunday, I will also come on very quickly at 11 a.m. just to give you again a rundown of how things are going to go. So 11 a.m. I will come on. I will tell you who the readers are for Sunday, and then I will see you again to close out the 3 days of the TIFF Summit. But the TIFF Summit is not over. Okay, so before we get on to what's going to happen Monday, the 19th, I do want to mention a few things because while the year was all about these gathering these numbers and gathering all these submissions, there were a couple of other things that we did in the year, right? And so we did two contests and we did one event. And so I just want to briefly mention those because the two writing contests that we did was the ICU um, contest, which happened on Friday the 13th. And we're looking to have that be the first book that we self-publish, that TIFF Press is going to publish in March of this year. And fingers crossed that still happens. There's been a bit of a delay from me, so hopefully we'll still be on track for that. And then the next one was the inanimate objects contest that happened on Halloween. So that will be the next. Um, collection that or anthology that we release under the TiF Press publication. And then we had the writing event, which went really well, which was the Secret Santa plot swap. And you didn't hear from me, but it's going to happen again next year. So, keep that on your calendar to be on the lookout. Now, if you want to know what's going to happen next year in totality, I am leaving nothing out except for one thing that I'm going to be teasing because it requires teasing. I can't simply just tell you it's a thing that has to be teased over time. But with the exception of that one thing, I am going to literally tell you everything that TIFF Press and that Top in Fiction is going to do in 2026. So if you want to know what all those things are, you need to tune in on Monday for the Top in Fiction State of the Union. So at the State of the Union, I will tell you everything again. I'm going to remind you everything. That means all the way through December. So I'm going to bring up the Secret Santa plot swap again because, like I said, that's going to happen. So I'm going to give you important dates, important months, important events. I'm going to let you know what's going to be any writing events that we do, um, and then any writing contests that we do. So I am trying to distinguish the difference. So if it's a writing contest, that means it's most likely going to become an anthology under TIFF Press publications. It will still be an event, so you can still participate in it. You can still write a story for it. But in order to um, essentially be in the anthology, you would need to participate, right? You don't have to enter the contest, but you do need to participate. So if it's couched as a writing contest, just know you will likely be invited to be a part of the anthology that will be coming out in 2027. If it's a writing event, like it's straight up an event such as the Secret Santa plot swap, and there are, I think, one or two other events that are happening, it's not going to be an anthology. It's just a fun event to do for anyone who wants to participate, and that will be made clear when each one happens. But there is going to be a distinction just because we can't anthologize every single thing that we do, but we do want to have a lot of writing events and we want the community to participate in them. So we don't want anyone to feel like they can't or they shouldn't because they might get asked to be in an anthology they don't want to be in. So if it's just a straight up writing event, like the Secret Santa plot swap, it's just going to be a writing event. There will be no anthology for that at all. But if it's something that's an actual contest with the event part attached to it, meaning you could just participate but not enter the contest, then yes, that means its intention is to become an anthology at a later date and time. So if you want to know about that, you have to tune in Monday, January 19th. I will likely try to come on at 9:30 a.m. It's a holiday, so I'll be home. My son will be home from school. So can I get down here to do that at 9:30? I'm gonna try. If not 9:30, then 10 or 10:30, but I'm shooting for 9:30. And in the email that I send for the State of the Union that will outline all the things planned for 2026, I will include the PDF of the annual recap that all of you guys, if you've been featured, if you're a fiction writer, fill out that form to get in there. If you don't know the link to that form, it will be in the email I send later today. That will be this recap of 2025. That email is going to come out that will have this video for you and will also have all the information that I gave earlier with all the numbers for all the categories, genres, number of writers, all that good stuff, all the nerdy stuff, okay? So that's it from me. You will see me again tomorrow morning at 10:30 tomorrow morning. I will come on here, like I said, and I will do the essentially the keynote opening for the first ever TIFF Summit 2025, 2026. Oh, I forgot. I need to remember we're on 2026, y'all. TIFF Summit 2026. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. Um, keep reading, keep writing, and I will catch you guys tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.